So future people who watch this in the future are gonna miss out on all the lovely banter we do before these meetings. But you know what? They'll get the meat and potatoes of it. So
They're lost.
okay, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna start out with the bank accounts. So this session is referred to as accountant in your kind of role descriptions. But in our universe, this would be called cash management, which is basically the bank accounts, bank reconciliations, deposits, check ledgers, and all that kind of good stuff. So it is a much smaller chunk of material, and so even though we have the full session here, scheduled, I don't know if we'll use all of it. We might. I can never tell how much I'm going to ramble. It's always hard to predict that. But hey, we'll see. So to start with, I'm going to talk a bit about bank accounts. So every module in this system at its core has like something that it revolves around, right? So in the world of AP, your vendor is that something, is that master record that all the entire AP module kind of revolves around. In the core finance module, it's the GL account. In AR, it's the customer. In fixed assets, it's, well, the fixed asset. And so here in cash management, it's the bank account. The bank account is the master record. And as a result, um, you go into the bank accounts page and you see the list of bank accounts that you have set up. Right off the bat on this list page, again, um, kind of harping back to the general overview, uh, you have a list page and a card page. So you have that list view and then you can click in and see the card view. But on the list view, you can do all your stuff where you can filter this list or filter these totals. So the balance there. So I could put a date filter to balance to see the balance of bank accounts as at, you know, January 1st or something. In this case, it's not going to change much because really the transactions are all kind of the same date, kind of static. But in any event, that's kind of something to bear in mind here is that you can use these filters to filter for stuff, and then you can also use the filters to filter for stuff. So if you want to, you can see ones that don't have a $0 balance, for example, that kind of good stuff. But that's enough waffling. Let's open up one of these bank cards. So not a ton that you really have to do with on this page on a day-to-day basis. Usually it's one of those set it and forget it type things. But just going top to bottom, there's a general communication posting. These are all the tabs that they organized. The fields on this page. The general is very self-explanatory. It's what's the code for this bank, what's the name of it, and some of like the basic stuff. Is this a blocked bank account? I don't know. What's the name of the bank account? All that kind of stuff, right? Communication tab is more about if you want to kind of maintain what the address and email and phone number and all that kind of stuff is. That comes in handy. There is also in the ribbon here, if I click in, I can navigate to contacts. So I can have multiple bank contacts at the bank. And this is quite often something you want to set up. You might have a certain contact when it comes to your ACH file validation stuff. You might have a contact just for your general products that you want to sign up for. I don't know. You might want to set up a whole bunch of contacts around that. But for the bank itself, on the highest level, you can set up the address and city and all that kind of information in the communication tab. You can also have fax numbers and all that. It's becoming less and less common to use fax, but banks are one of the few industries where faxes are still a thing. Government and banks, pretty much. And then the posting tab. This is where you go to set up things like what was the last check number. So this is something I'll be getting from you guys before you go live, so that we set this up so that the next check that prints is the right sequence. As well as what's the last remittance advice number. This is less important. This isn't something that actually gets validated by the bank. This is just a sequential thing that generates when you email out the remittance advice. In other words, kind of like that virtual check stub to your ACH recipients. Last statement number, again, just usually a set it once and forget it kind of thing. But this just keeps track of what was the last document for these different things, right? Jumping ahead to the bank, and you can also see what the balance last statement is as well. If you want to at a glance see what that is. This will auto-populate when you post your reconciliations. So in your bank recs, you're going to be putting, what's the ending balance and all that kind of stuff. And that comes and backfills this field here, so you don't have to dig for it if you're looking for that. Bank account posting groups. This concept of the posting group is something that is ubiquitous throughout the whole system. So there's vendor posting groups, there's customer posting groups, fixed asset posting groups. The bank account posting group is basically, how do you tie this record to your general ledger, right? So it's kind of like that Rosetta Stone, the little middle ground that says, this bank is part of this posting group, and this posting group is linked to this GL account number. You may be wondering, why would you kind of have it set up this way? In some cases, you might actually have separate bank accounts in the system, but really they all like roll into a single GL account. Oftentimes I see that more with credit card reconciliation. If someone sets up a credit card, they'll just set this all up to a clearing account or something, a credit card clearing account or something like that. But yeah, this is the idea of a posting group. Again, usually set it and forget it. But it's good to know, because if you open a new bank account, this is something you'll have to come in and create a new one and tie it to where you want on your balance sheet it to tie to. The transfer tab is where all the ACH kind of details are like housed and they live. Usually, again, set it and forget it. This is also where you can go to set up your bank statement import, as well as your payment export, so that NACHA file, right, that ACH file format in here. Down here, this is probably an area that's a little bit more clients will maybe play around with a little bit more, which is if you have the check stock, you can have it auto print signatures. So if I come in here, I can go import a picture file. Yeah, so this one I just it's gonna look pretty stupid, but this is just something I went into Microsoft Paint, MS Paint, and I just did a squiggly line. But just to demonstrate, you can upload a signature file, and then you can set maximum amounts for a signature. So maybe you want both signatures to print, assuming you had a second signature. Let's just point to the exact same one. Let's say you want both signatures to print up to like $1,000, right? So signature 2 will cap out at 1,000, and signature 1 1,500. So let's say if anything is under $1,000, both of these will print. If anything is between 1,000 and 1,500, only the first one will print, and if it's above 1,500, neither will print. So that will require manual signature. So you can set up that kind of rules based on what your own internal policies and controls are and all that good stuff. This is also where you can go to set like date formats and all that stuff. Again, this one is usually set it and forget it. There's micro kind of printing support as well, assuming you have like a magnetic ink printer, that prints that stuff. All that micro information at the bottom of the check, the system does have the ability to print that automatically as well. I personally prefer getting all that pre-printed onto the check stock. But again, it's a matter of what your organizational rules and policies are. Same thing we saw yesterday when we were kind of going through the list page. You can default dimensions and account sets onto this bank account, so that anytime you're posting something to this bank account, let's say a deposit or a general journal entry or something like that, you can have it default with some dimensions if you'd like to. Doesn't make a super ton of sense unless like you're doing more restricted fund kind of accounting, where you want certain bank accounts to only tie to specific funds and that kind of thing, right? But that's kind of the base fields here in a nutshell. There's also a section you can have notes, like for example, I don't know, let's say, oh yeah, when contacting bank, all changes to the account require, signatories, written approval or something like that. Like you can put little notes, little love letters on the side here to keep track of certain things that you might want to keep track of, really, relating to this bank. All right, so that's all fun and dandy. So the real useful kind of things that you'd probably be doing more so on this page is drilling into these balances. So we are going to, at the end of like the this agenda. We're going to go into the ledger entries a little more detail, but you can see at this point in time, this is the balance. It is in overdraft state. But if you click on there, you can see all the underlying transactions that make up that total. So this is really your bank account subledger that you're looking at. Some people ask, why are there two? Well, the truth is that you may have bank accounts that are in different currencies. This is in USD, right? The home currency. But had this been a different currency, this top one that doesn't have the dollar sign will just be the currency of this bank account. So let's pretend this is a Canadian dollar bank account. This would be the Canadian dollars, and then this one down here would show you the US dollar balance of that. So we would expect this to be higher since the Canadian dollar is weaker than the US dollar, right? So that's kind of the explanation for that. But really, if you drill into it, they both go to the same subledger. They just pull up different fields because there's an amount field here, but in the background there's actually a second field that keeps track of the foreign currency amount too. All right. The other thing though is that maybe this is just the current balance, but if you wanted to see historic balances or rolling balances, there is a page you can go to under the Navigate tab called Balance. And when you click on that, you can view it by weeks, by days, by months, by quarters, and it will show you, the balance at date. Or if you want to see the net change, it'll show you the net change for that period. And again, you can always drill down into these values to see what happened during that period. Where's that different number I saw somewhere? Well, I guess because I'm in 2023, obviously there won't be much there. Yeah, I'll go back to balance at date. Anyway, you get the idea. Like it'll show up here, and then you click on this, and it will show you. Let's go this one actually. That's a different number. My browser is being funny with me today. There we go. Okay, yeah, it'll show you all the entries that make up that balance. So it's basically a running total, really, right? For that. And yeah, so that's this page, the balance page. The other thing you might be doing is you might be running the trial balance. Where is that? And so I'm clicking around like a blind person, but you can always use a search function here and attempt to spell correctly, and it will show you on the current page. There's a trial balance, so I can run that for this bank account. I put in a date range. Let's say to January 31st. And I can preview it. I can send it as a PDF. I can put it into Excel, do all that stuff. Oh, I click cancel. But what we can do is let's just open that as a PDF for now. 131.22, and let's take a look at that. So it's a little printout that shows you the activity in that bank account for that period of time. Posting dates, what type of document was it? What's the number? Was there a description that was put in, the amounts, all that lovely stuff. The other thing you might want to look at is because the trial balance will include all types of transactions. Maybe you just want to look at checks. Well, there is a check detail report you can run as well. Let's just go 01/01/22 to 01/31. Actually, let's do it to date because I don't remember if I had anything in January. I probably do, but yeah, okay. So then this is like a check register really. It shows you the check number, the description, amounts, all that lovely detail. The other thing you can do here, which is kind of an interesting from a cash flow or liquidity point of view, is you can look at your receivable. I before E except after. See, was it? Yeah. Okay. Receivable payable summary. So I can see here that looking at here, I can see what my total AR is that's due, my total AP that's due, and then what the receivable minus payable is to see if I have any shortfalls in cash. So here I can see that on March 30th, I have a whole bunch of stuff coming due on my AR side, 1.6 million, and I have a whole bunch of AP coming due, like 38,000. So I'm in okay state. So right now I should be, assuming everyone pays, I should be okay for cash, at this point. But you can look ahead too to see kind of more on a forecasting basis to say, oh boy, we're going to have a big issue in June because we have a whole bunch of AP due and we don't have a lot of receivables. So that's the kind of analysis you might be doing with this type of on this page. Any questions at all around the bank account? I know it's not like the most the most commonly accessed or modified kind of page, but any questions all around what we've shown? If not, then we'll move ahead. All right. So from here as well, you can jump into a cash receipt journal if you want to record cash receipts, payment journals. But sometimes you're just going to want to do some journal entries, and you don't want to have to come to the bank account to do that. So from my home page, I might just navigate to the general journal, and in here I just go into a batch, and I can left to right. I'm going to craft kind of a journal entry here. But basically, your journal entry, you go left to right. You begin with what your posting date is. Let's say we want to post this as at last month. Maybe this is like a month end kind of adjustment or something. We can say like bank adjust as a document number. I can choose an account set code if this is like if there's some dimensions that I want to post specifically to. Now here's where it gets interesting. So in the account type, I can't, I should, well, right now I have everything enabled, but when you're live, you won't be able to directly post to a bank general ledger account because it's a control account, right? So the way that you go about posting to that is by changing this type to a bank account. And then you pick the bank account that you want to post to. And let's say, I don't know, this is like a, credit card fee withdrawals for March 2022 or something like that, right? So for that, like on the deb or the yeah, so on the left side of my equation here, I have the bank account. So what do I want to do? Do I want to increase it or do I want to decrease it? So I'm going to decrease it by like $50, right? So it's basically a credit to my bank account. In other accounting software, what you might do is you might have a debit and then credit, right, line, and you can still definitely do that. I can come down here, I could put in my credit, sorry, my I guess debit in this case side of things. I can pick GL account and I can see fees. I don't know where credit card fees would go. Let's just put into the general fees. And I can press F8 to copy the above description, and I can come in here and put in that. So basically, I've debited my fees expense and I've credited my bank account. This is one way to do it. And before posting, I can do what's called preview posting, which shows me what's going to be the net effect. And when I click on that, you can see that it's going to hit my GL entries and it's going to hit my bank account ledger entries. And I can click on show related entries to see what those are, or I can click on the number here. And I can see on the GL, it's going to be, a plus 50 for the expenses and a minus 50 for the bank account GL account. But in addition to that, it's also going to hit my bank account subledger. If I show entries, it's going to show me that yeah, there's a minus 50, in my bank account subledger. This is one way to do it. And I now am realizing while talking to you guys that this whole plus minus thing might not be super logical, or you might not actually like it. So what I can do is instead of saying amount, I can show debits and credits if you'd like, if that makes more sense to you and you're more comfortable with that. I just have to go out and come back in. And yeah, so I've credited my bank account 50 and I've debited my my expense here, 50. The reason why I was saying like you could do it as two lines is that you can technically, if I delete this line, if it's a single line entry, I can just put in a balancing number here of fees. And that's automatically going to offset this entry against this GL with all the same dimensions, on this line and the same description. Does that kind of make sense? How I could just do it in a single line and not have to worry about doing an offsetting debit as a second line, right? So this is one way you can craft journal entries. And the net result is exactly the same, right? I do wonder, I think we're going to have a different session going into general journals in a little more detail, so I don't want to dwell on this for too long because it's going to be a lot of repeated information. But ultimately, really what I want to zero in on is that when you want to do adjustments in the general journal against the bank account, you just change the type from from GL account to bank account, and then you pick your bank account master record, and that automatically ties to the GL account that's associated with this, the control account, by virtue of that posting group that we saw earlier. I don't know if that's clear as mud or if it's all good. But invariably, that's kind of how this thing works. I can go ahead and I can post this. Now I posted this, but potentially you might have to do approvals, right? Depending on how you guys structure things in your permissions, you might want someone else to approve it first, in which case you wouldn't be able to post it directly. You'd have to submit it for approval. Once that person approves, then it posts and all that good stuff. For each of these entries, also, by the way, you can attach documents. You can attach like any backup information. In that case, it was we're doing a fee, so you might have like a scan of your bank statement or something, and just highlighting the fees and just attaching it. Just for that audit trail and document management side of things. Any questions at all around journal entries? I mean, I know it's funny because journal entries are journal entries no matter where you go, kind of thing. But I realized that the Business Central does things a little bit differently, given that you have the balancing account fields, as well as the ability to just use a single amount field instead of debits and credits, or both. If you have a preference, let me know, because that is a central setting that I have to set, whether to show only debits and credits, or just show the amounts, or both. Maybe that could be like a poll you guys do to see what works for you.
Does it set it for everybody, or is it per individual?
Yeah, it's everybody within this company. So it is a company by company global setting. So yeah, if you set it, it applies to everyone. And if you wanted to give people the option, what I would recommend then is just show all of them. Click show all, and that way an individual user can come in here and say, because it shows all of them together, can just hide the one that they don't want to see. If they just want to see debits and credits, they can come in here and just hide those. Or if they want to see just the amounts, they can come in, they can hide the debit field and credit field, that is. That way it's kind of like the most flexible.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Let's leave it with that setting.
Yeah, you guys don't have any foreign currency bank accounts right now.
Correct.
Do you anticipate ever setting one up? No?
Really do not.
Okay, so I'm just gonna for the recording purpose, I'm gonna quickly just mention that had this transaction been a different currency, you just pick the currency that transaction is for. So if it was Mexican pesos or euros or whatever, and then these three little dots will let you change the exchange rate that you want to use for that transaction. And that's all. That's all I really care to talk about here, is that's how you set the currency, and this is how you set the rate to use. One of these fields will be editable as soon as you actually had a currency in there. All right. Just breezing through this, hey? This is going to be super fast. The next thing I want to go over is deposits. So say like you received, a stack of checks or something in the mail, and you want to kind of deposit them. You can totally do that through a general journal if you'd like. The way that we were doing it there is where you pick, you pick your bank account and all that stuff, and then on the right hand side you might pick customer or whatever it might be related to. But the deposit, I think, is a lot more of a logical place to enter that kind of information into. So deposit card, the way it works is this. Let's go to deposits page. First, you'd navigate to the deposits page, which is a list page. There's nothing in there now. You click on new. And once you enter that, you're into this page here. First thing you do is you click the three dots, and because you can have different sequences of deposits, you could have maybe one for customer deposits, one for like, I don't know, grant deposits. If you'd like to, you can have different number series for those as well. And you can have different journal batches that relate to those. So you could have different batches for those. Right now, I'm just going to use the default batch, but I'm going to put a deposit for, let's say, our operating account. So I pick the bank account that I want to deposit to, and I can fill the total deposit amount here, or I can wait till the end to tally it up to put that in there. Right now, why don't we just say like $1,500? I can choose my posting date. So this is the date in which it's going to hit my general ledger and my sub ledger. So when I'm pulling financial reports, that's what this date is really all about. So let's say I want to put this for the beginning of the month. Document date is more just a notional date. If I had a separate document in front of me that had a date, you know, I could have that be maybe I received this on the 5th, and I'm going to date that the 5th just to keep track of the document date around that. You can put your dimensions here as well if this is at all going to, on the subledger side, need dimensions. But really what we're interested in is this section down here, the lines. So I have a $1,500 deposit to the Alpine operating account. Right now, there's a difference of 1,500 because I have no lines set up yet. Now is where I can come in and I can start crafting my lines. What makes up this total 1,500 deposit? Let's say I received a customer payment. So I can click on customer. Let's go ahead and just pick the first customer there, 22nd Judicial Probation. I can put in details if I want to, you know, received by courier. This isn't a donation, so I can tab over anything that's donation related. And in fact, it didn't seem like you guys use the charitable receipting within ERP anyway, so you could hide all the charitable donation and the tax receipt kind of side of things. Let's say it was a check, so I can put my check date here. I don't know, let's say it's dated March 18th. It's a payment. What's the check number? So document number, I can say check number 4774 or whatever the case may be. And then because I have a customer that's a receivable, I'm going to be crediting that account by whatever the total of this check is. Let's say it's $550. I put that amount in there. If I were to just post this as is, this would just go onto the customer's account and not get applied to any specific invoice that they might have outstanding. So instead, what I'll do is I'll just click on that line and I will go functions, apply entries. So I have $550 that I'm going to now allocate across these two invoices. So they have an older invoice here, dated February 22nd for $300, and a more newer invoice that I just kind of posted recently on the Ides of March there for $500. So I'm going to apply it to both of these. I highlight both of them and I click on set applies to ID. So basically I'm marking these ones to apply to. Once I do that, I can play around with how much to apply. So I'm going to do the full 300 for the older invoice and a partial payment, let's say half of that, you know, to this newer invoice. So I've taken the full available amount of 550 and I've applied it. So there's nothing outstanding for me to apply. You can see down here that number's in there. So I click OK. And then once I post this, that application will be on there so that the next time we send this customer a statement, all they'll see is a 250 remaining balance on that newer invoice, right? That $500 invoice. But right now I put in a $550 check. I still have to reconcile $950 more for this deposit. And, you know, I could do multiple things. I could do vendor refunds. I could do a bank-to-bank transfer if I want to set a bank account, or I could do GL accounts if this isn't related to a customer or anything at all. Maybe this just goes to some holding account or some, you know, some kind of random interest expense or something like that, right? Yeah, why don't we just do that? Is there interest? Sorry, interest income. Let's put it as interest income. That's a lot of interest income, but but I can come in here. I can say like details, interest on term deposits or whatever the case may be, right? And then I go ahead and I can credit again because this is a revenue account. I'm going to be crediting it the 950 bucks or whatever it was. Okay. Once I put that in there, my difference is now 0. So the 1,500 that I said this deposit totals to is equal to the 1,500 of total of the lines, right? I can attach stuff if I want to attach things to this. So, you know, it's always handy to attach things. You might want to scan the check before depositing or the stub or whatever the case may be. You might have a statement on your investments that you want to attach this. Regardless, whatever the case may be, once you're done, you just actually, I'm not going to post it. I'm going to show you something else. There is a report that you can print called a test report. And when you preview that or print it or whatever, it's another kind of printout of like what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Zooming on my browser is a little messed up right now. But yeah, basically it tells me it's going to be deposited in this bank account. This is the currency code. This is the description that's going to appear on the general ledger. This is the total amount. These are the dates that I set. This is my name. This is the times. It's timestamped, date stamped. These are all the different lines, basically. And here I have a warning that's already telling me that I didn't enter a document number for the interest income. Yeah, interest income there. So actually, if I were to try to post it, it would give me an error. So that's good to know. I'm gonna come in here. I'm just gonna put interest. What month was this? April. Well, let's say this is from March, right? Because maybe they credit at the end of the month or whatever. Anyway, so I put that in. So that test report again is something you can print in advance of posting. You can also just post it, or you can do a post and print. And so clients seem to really enjoy using post and print because what that does is it posts it and then gives you some documentation that maybe you want to print out or save somewhere that basically just highlights what you just did, you know. So it's showing me this is the total, this is what was deposited, and maybe this is something you, I don't know, you keep track of somewhere. Maybe upload this somewhere. Sorry, Barbara, you had a question?
So what if we have the person who's entering the deposits, we don't want them to post it, we want somebody else because we want that person to review?
Okay, that's an excellent scenario. There is no approval on the deposit. So instead, what you would do is you would limit this. We do this through permissions. So you let us know who needs to be able to create and who needs to be able to edit and post. And then what we'd use, this function is tied to a bunch of code in the background. So we'd have to set permissions as to who can use that function and who can't, if that makes sense. So the long and short of it is that you can segregate the duties on this. You just need to let us know, and we would handle that through permissions and not through approvals. And actually, that is a very common scenario to be frank. So yeah, great question. Once something's been posted, it's gone out of the deposits page. So then we can look at the posted deposits. There's actually a separate page called posted deposits where we can look back and, you know, reminisce about the times when we created this deposit and see any of the attachments that may be associated with it. You know, see all the lovely details that were on that deposit at the time. You can, from this deposit, also use the find entries function, and this will show me all the resulting postings from this. So this is going to be something, by the way, you see across the board. Whenever you see find entries, it's a way you can navigate from any one spot in the system to all the other spots that are related to this. So when I posted this, it created these 4 GL entries. It created this one customer ledger entry. It's a payment type. It created these 2 bank account ledger entries, which were the two lines I put in there. And it also created the posted deposit header and lines. But It's kind of a neat way you can, from any point in time, say like, okay, when I posted this, what was the actual entry that happened? Well, you can always navigate to the actual general ledger entries directly from there to see what the net effect was. All right. So that was deposits in a nutshell. Make
So
sense?
can we see an audit trail on that too?
Yeah. So where is it? I should be able to see when I click on print. Oh, actually, I remember now. What you could do is anytime that something's posted in the system, there is a register in the background. You can see here the bank deposit. This bank deposit, it shows me the entries that this is related to. So again, if I navigate from those GL entries to here, same entries, right? It'll tell me who did it, what date and what time. So this logs everything in the system. And actually, this is the screen you'd go to reprint that post and print printout. So you just come in here and you'd reprint the TL register report from here, basically. Did that kind of answer that? So yeah, so the system does log for every source code, who and what time and when they did it, and it will from here you can also navigate to the, you know, the customer ledger entry that resulted from it. Again, I was saying like, from anywhere in the system, you can go to anywhere that it affects. You can, oh, I guess there was no vendor ledger entries, but yeah, you can navigate to all the different sub ledgers that tie into this specific transaction.
So would it put then, let's say Sadie entered it, but then Barbara posted it, would it show two things or just going to show the last person?
It'll just show whoever posted it. Yeah.
But it's not going to show then who entered it.
No, the entry, I mean, I could take a look to see if in the background it's stored anywhere. Yeah, I mean, it does track who created the record and who modified it. The only downside of this though is that technically if I created this, but you came and filled it out and then someone else posted it, your name wouldn't be in the mix. You know what I mean? It would just show who created this record, and then the GL register would show who posted it. But if anyone in the interim, between someone creating it and someone posting it went in and tweaked stuff, that isn't shown here. What you could do though, if that is something you want to definitely have as like a breadcrumb or a point to track, we can set up what are called change logs, and this will track everything. Like we can set up so that on this on the deposit, it tracks anytime anyone inserts records, anyone modifies, anyone deletes. So change logs are the audit trail for anything in the system that's modified or created. Again, that's just something you just need to let us know if that's something you actively want to track. And so maybe as kind of a takeaway for Jesse and the team is maybe to come up with a list of different functional areas where you want to be able to track who inserted, modified, deleted, certain records. And the reason why I'm saying a specific list and not just everything is that change log entries, if you enable it for every field and every table, you will very quickly fill up your your database, because it literally tracks every single thing. If you enable it, it'll track what the old value is and what the new value is, who did it, and the exact time that specific field changed, and all that kind of stuff. So, so you want to be rather judicious, with what you're enabling on the change log side of things. Typically, you want to reserve it for the high risk areas, or areas that generally just want to report on. Maybe you want to have some performance reporting, to see like, okay, I want to track to see how quickly my staff are between inserting and posting documents, how long it's taking them to do stuff. That's where change logs can really kind of shine, is more the high risk audit, and also like the management reporting, let's say, side of things, operationally reporting on that stuff. But yeah, so I'll leave that with Jesse and Megan and all to kind of.
Are there any parameters you can set on those, Ramin, so they don't just keep like filling up?
Yeah, you can also delete change logs. I mean, you can, let's see. Oops, no. You can delete entries. So you can have specific date ranges. So I can say up to the beginning of this month, you can just go ahead and delete them all. You can even say, you saw that schedule function. You can also set it to schedule, but there's also retention policies you can set up. So you can have it so that it only keeps the audit trail for, a year or whatever on a detailed basis.
Okay. That's
And again,
what I was
that will
looking
be whatever's saved in the system. So if you did want to still keep it like an offsite or cold storage or whatever we want to call it, you can always, export this data and then purge it out of this system, right? And put that into some kind of cold storage solution.
Well, Ramin, on that entry where you brought up the modified, like the created, modified, and posted info, would it have multiple, like if multiple people modified it, would it have multiple modified entries?
No, it would be the last person who modified it.
The last modified, okay.
Yeah. And so if the person who posted made a small tweak before posting, then effectively that'll be the name of the person who posted it, right? So that's why I was saying that middle kind of area is lost if you don't have change logs enabled, because it'll show you who created it and that's stored in static, and it'll show you who posted it and that's stored in static. But if in the middle a whole bunch of different people kind of touched it, then you lose that visibility unless you have change logs enabled, because it's just one field, right? It's one field called who created, it's one field called who modified. And so it doesn't have the ability to have like rolling multiple values in that single field. That's why change log entries come in handy, because it is a rolling log of everything that changes. Also, I've been kind of, and I know we're going on a bit of a tangent. I did kind of make it sound like all or nothing when it came to the change logs, but you can very well come in here and say you only want to track some fields, you know. Like if someone comes in and modifies like the document number, maybe that's not something you care to track. Maybe it's like amounts or GL accounts or stuff like that. So you can come and say specific fields, and this is showing me the fields on this table, for example. I can say I want to track who inserts new training codes, and I want to track who modifies pay types. So you can get really granular with the change logs. It's just not something I like playing around with because it's a lot of maintenance. But yeah, again, let us know what makes sense for you guys in terms of tracking, because you can get granular between who created, who modified, and who deleted, and then even within those buckets, again, you can go on the field level and say specific fields I care about. A very common one, I will say, this is again completely a tangent here, vendor bank accounts. Vendor bank accounts are a high risk area of the system, because when you produce an ACH file, it's just a file. It's not like when you open up, you're like, oh, that transit number isn't this person's transit number. So if someone goes and puts their own banking information, into vendor's bank account, that's a big problem. It's notoriously hard to claw back money once you send it electronically too, right? Unless it's fraud, in which case there's a whole different process for that. But you know what I mean? So generally, I find this is an area where A, you'd lock down who has access to it at all, right? And then B, you'd want to keep track of any changes that are made to the banking information on the vendor level, right? So I'll highlight this as a very, very high risk area that you probably want to explore, unless it's literally just one person who has permission to see it and modify it, in which case you don't even need to enable that because it's just the one person, right? But yeah. Okay, we went into a bit of a change log tangent there, but hopefully that kind of answered that question around the audit trail. Basically, the long and short of it is you have complete control of how much information you want to trail on your audit, to log and keep track of. And then surfacing it, you can create really nice, fancy Power BI dashboards to kind of kind of highlight maybe some stuff. Maybe you have some exception reporting or something built out. All right, so that was deposits. Any questions around deposits? These are great questions, so I definitely encourage if you do have stuff, by all means, Okay, I'll take the silence as a no questions. We're going to jump into bank account reconciliations now. So again, you have your bank balances here, and if you disable control accounts, direct posting on these. So if you prevent people from directly posting to the GL account, then typically your subledger and your general ledger will always agree. You can clearly see that they don't in this case because I don't think I'm done kind of bring in those opening balances or figuring out how to kind of back populate the back balance. But anyway, so typically on an ongoing basis, you don't necessarily have to worry about balancing your subledger and general ledger if this direct posting flag is turned off. But if in case you do, you would want to do that before doing a bank rec, because a bank rec isn't reconciling those two. It's reconciling your system's concept of what the balance is with what your bank's concept of the balance is. So reconciliation can be a two-tiered process if you have a lot of manual entries being directly put to the GL account. So I would say, get your kind of house in order on the subledger general ledger side first, and then you can jump into the lovely functionality here called bank account reconciliations. Oh, I guess I already created one. Okay. You come in, you click on new, and then you pick which bank account you want to be reconciling. And then you give it a statement date. So typical to reconcile monthly. I have seen some clients reconcile weekly just because of the volume of transactions that they bring in. I think that's a lot of work personally, but yeah, but whatever your cadence is, you put in your statement date here, you download your statement from the bank, and then you put in what the last statement balance is up here. Well, this gets auto-populated, I should say, sorry. As soon as you post this one, this ending balance will go into your bank card, and then that will automatically populate here. I'm going to keep it as 0 because we have no transactions prior to this in the system. But then here you put in your bank statement balance. So I actually have this number, believe it or not, on the side here. So I put that in there. You can see if I were to change this date, by the way, 30/31/22. See on the right hand side here, my subledger entries expand to include everything that's open up until that period, so that I'm not kind of inundated with a whole bunch of noise that's irrelevant to me when I'm reconciling. So I'm just doing January for now, and these are all fake transactions, so take it with a grain of salt. On the right hand side here, I can either manually come in and plop in the lines from my bank account, which again sounds like a lot of work. I can copy paste it from Excel, or I can just use the import function, which you click for the file you want to import. So I pulled a Martha Stewart and pre-baked the cake. So I have this all set up here right off the bat. I can see that there's an ACH that cleared on January 3rd, and that is related to this ACH payment from December of last month. But because of the timing difference, this is obviously in a different month and all that stuff. But anyway, I have my transactions on the left for my bank and my ledger entries on the right according to the software. And there's going to be some stuff that is that I wouldn't have known until I saw my bank statement, like wire fees and all that kind of stuff, right? Right now, I could manually highlight this line and this line, whoops, and this line, and then I can do match manually, right? If I wanted to do one by one kind of matching, or I can use the match automatically function, and I give it a tolerance of days. So because this ACH cleared on January 3rd, and this one was December 28th, I think, I need to give it a few more days than if I were to put in 2 days, you can see that this did not match to this because they're not within the threshold of days, right? That's more than 2 days. But it did match these guys, these green ones, to these green ones. So it automatically did a match, and there's 0 difference. So that's kind of good. Or I'm just going to clear my matches. I'm going to increase this to 7 days. And you can see now it picked up that wire because, again, the interval between January 3rd and December 28th, is longer than 2 days. I'm not going to do the math. I don't know how many days that is, to be honest. But anyway, yeah, so that's how the auto matching works. And then this one here, well, it makes sense that it would show my subledger and not the bank because it was literally the last day of January. So I'm probably going to see this in February statement. So I can just leave that as is. But you can see that there's a $25 difference based on the ending balance I have here, the stuff that cleared and matched. There's a $25 difference, and that's completely related to this wire fee. So what I can do is from here, go up to process, and I can transfer this one line. If I highlight more, I can transfer more to the general journal. And it's going to tell me, which batch do you want to put that in? I'm just going to put in the default batch, to be honest. I click OK, then it takes me there. Oh yeah, this line existed from before, sorry. But yeah, it takes me there. It puts in this line. You can see it uses the posting date as per the bank statement. It pulls in the description from the bank statement and the amount from the bank statement. But everything else is up to me. Oh, and it automatically balances it to that bank that I'm reconciling. But everything else is up to me to fill out, like the document number. So I'm going to call this like wire fee Jan 19, 2022 or whatever. I also maybe want to put in the dimensions, because a wire fee is going to hit my income statement. So I probably want to have some P&L information there, right? I'm going to pick what GL account this wire fee should go to. I'm going to just go ahead and put it to fees. And if I want to, I can put a description, say, pay to, I don't know, Netflix. That's kind of silly. But yeah, you can put whatever description there, whatever details. Again, you have the option of adding attachments. But really, what I care about is posting this. And as soon as I post it, if I go back to my reconciliation, you can see it automatically posted and matched it. So that $25 is now in match. I have a $0 difference. I'm a happy camper. I can go ahead and post. So again, you can use the post and print thing. If I do post and print, it posts it and then gives me this kind of printout, which is basically just showing me for statement number 1, for this bank account, these are the cleared transactions, right? So these are applied. I don't know. And then, yeah, I don't know how useful this is because you already have a statement and I don't know. Anyway, either way, so this is the printout that comes out of the system when you do that. But it does disappear from your bank recs. And there's no place called posted bank recs for that kind of auto-match bank rec. If you wanted to look up old bank recs, you just go back to your bank account that you reconciled, and you can navigate to the statements page. And this will show you all the statements that you've reconciled. If I open this will look familiar. This is basically those the statement lines. And you can see that I can drill in and see what the bank account subledger entry that was cleared against. I can also undo a statement. Why would you want to do that? Well, maybe you screwed up, or maybe you need to void a check that's been cleared because you can't void a check that's been cleared on your bank rec, which I'll get into shortly around that. Any questions at all around the bank reconciliation process? All right. Oh yeah, go ahead.
So what about if we have a bank account that we really don't want to download the bank stuff because it's only like 2 lines? Can you just clear things? Do you have to match or?
Using this bank rec function, what you could do instead of bringing in statements is literally just manually put in those lines to the right.
So you do have to put something in on that bank statement lines. You have to have something over there.
Yeah, you just put an amount there and then you match it. You just put it, yeah, the date and all that stuff. Yeah, that's what this type of bank rec. Because if you recall, I said there's 2 bank recs. There's like an older one that's more akin to what you see in other software, and then there's this one, which is the side-by-side auto match one. That's a great question, and let's let's actually look into that right here. So if I were to change my bank rec to not have the auto match one, yeah, I know, buddy. This is what the old, I shouldn't call it old, really. It's just the other version of a bank rec looks like, where you have the information on top, you put in your statement numbers. Like this stuff is kind of the same statement date. You put in your balance as per statement, and then you come in here. There's these different sections called checks, deposits, and adjustments. And then you come in here and you suggest lines. You pull from your subledger anything up to and including 131.22. Actually, that won't show anything, will it? Because I cleared that already. Let's go February. And you can see it pulled in all these subledger details. And I'm going to actually put this at 228.22. I should populate something in here. I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever the bank statement balance should be. And then I can come in here and just mark them as cleared. You know, the checks that actually cleared, I can do that. If there were deposits, I would see them here. I could clear them as well. And if there's any bank fees, I can come in here and just say bank fees, $25, or actually minus $25 because this is the bank side. And this side, I put in the fees GL account. Yeah. And then right now there's a giant difference because again, I haven't quite sorted out the opening balance stuff yet. But once this difference is 0, I can then post this bank rec. And so this would be a way to do it without having to do anything with the bank statement at all, right? And this is very, again, I sound like a broken record. This is very familiar to anyone who's used like the bank rec module in virtually any other accounting software, right? Where you just pretty much check stuff off and then post it. Now, having said that,
do the matching part, what happens if on the bank statement it comes over without a check number? Like they couldn't scan it, it was the wrong check number. Does it match it by check number or by dollar amount for cleared checks?
it does it a few ways. What was it called? Payment tolerance? No, it's not. It's called payment rules. I'm trying to remember what the rules are. There is a I can find it. There is a pecking order between document number, between date and amount, and based on the 3 of those, it assigns a weight, right? And then it has a certain confidence of a match. Once it hits a certain threshold for that confidence, then it's considered a match, right? But if the amounts very different, the dates very different, and the check number is completely different, it won't match at all. If 2 out of 3 of those are a match, then it may clear it. You know what I mean?
Okay. So
I'm
my
being,
question is,
yeah.
my main question is when we pay our vendors right now by ACH, on the bank side, it's one lump sum. And in Great Plains, it's individuals. And so we have to go and combine all the ones that are on a certain date and match them to a $1 amount on the bank rec. How is that going to work in this system if we pay 10 vendors on an ACH? In Sparkrock, it's going to be 10 vendors, but on the bank rec, the statement, it's $1 amount. How would it match that one then?
So it wouldn't, right? Because the auto match it doesn't do like that subtotaling. But I'm glad you raised that point, because this is a huge point of contention for people who had used the old bank rec and want to move to the new bank rec, because the old bank rec actually does support something called collapsed deposits. So I didn't prepare this in advance, so apologies if we have any random like weird pop-ups that I have to sort through. But I do want to show it because it is a kind of cool thing there. Let's do 331.22. Let's pick a bank account. Let's stick to operating. Why not? Say let's say $1,600. Customer. Let's just pick random customers. I don't really care so much about that. Test 1, test 2, test 3. I can't spell. Okay, and for those customers, there's like six. Okay, let's do 600, then 400, and another 600, right? Something like that. So this is one single deposit of 1600, and there are 3 lines associated with it, right? Okay, I posted that. Now, on my bank statement, that might appear as a single 1600 line item, right?
Right.
If I go, let's just do 331.22. If I were to go here and do the suggest lines function for both up to 331, both deposits and checks. See here, I have a single collapsed deposit of 1600, which will be very easy to match to my bank statement. But let's say my bank is random. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. I can click on this line and expand it. And I can see the individual checks that make up that total, or I can go back and just collapse it, you know? So that's the one advantage of this bank rec worksheet, is that you have the ability to collapse and expand, you know, any transactions that share the same external document number, basically that are on the same transaction, really, right? So yeah, so this may be something during the testing phase of this project you might want to play around with and do kind of a bake-off between the auto match version and this one, because it is all or nothing. It is that you can't set it so that one bank account uses auto match and one doesn't, one doesn't. It's one single setting again on the general ledger setup that either enables or disables the auto match, and that's it for the entire company, right? So definitely something you want to play around with, see which one you like more. Now at Sparkrock, we do have an import that we built in the event that you want to kind of take advantage of a little bit of the best of both worlds, in the sense that you want to keep using this worksheet one, but you want to be able to import checks, let's say. Was it? Let me find it. It's like we have a little deposit line. No, that's not it. Maybe it is deposit line import. Yeah, it's one of these. It's one of these downloads anyway. Oh, bank statement import. That's it. So this one allows you to import cleared checks, and it's just strictly for use with this bank rec worksheet. What that'll do is that'll automatically come in and check anything off that it finds matching that Excel file.
Okay, so on the auto match, would you be able to, let's say, if we were to we wanted to use that one, and it didn't match the 10 transactions from Sparkrock to the one transaction in the bank, can we manually match those
100%. Yeah.
adding them ourselves?
Yeah. That's the one. Yeah, you can definitely do that. Let me set this statement date to 3/31/22. So let's say here your bank statement has something like this. Big deposit, right? Thing like that. And this would be, let's say, dated 3/30, whatever the case may be. You would just highlight the. Oh, actually, these are already cleared, aren't they? Oh, because they're in the other bank rec. Oh, whatever. Yeah, but the point is that these would show up. You'd highlight the ones that you want there. Let's actually remove all matches. The system's confused because you keep going back and forth between old and new. But all you do is you'd highlight this one line on the left and these multiple lines on the right, and you click on match manually, and then it would set the match.
Okay.
If that makes sense. And this applied amount, when you click on it, instead of seeing one line, you'd see 3 lines to show that it applied to the 3 lines from your subledger. So yeah, you can totally match manually too. And honestly, it is like matching automatically isn't 100% of the time, because the banks and different transactions will change and shift. And banks are notorious for just being, I don't know, they don't care about making your life easier. They're just posting whatever they're posting, right? So yeah, so you usually when you run auto match, let's say 60% of things will match. Then 20% of it might be stuff that doesn't even exist in your subledger, so you do the whole transfer to general journal, and then the remaining percentage are just stuff that you'd have to manually kind of match like this, which is manageable if you have like up to, let's say, 100 transactions per month become a little bit more hard to deal with if you're dealing in the thousands of transactions a month, right? But what you can also do is like to make, yeah, actually that's about it. Never mind. There's no real. There's pros and cons to both, is what I'll say. You know, both bank rec formats.
So, Ramin, that collapsed deposit functionality, would that work the same, you know, if we're generating an ACH file for payables in Sparkrock, for instance, and then it's hitting our bank as one ACH transaction, like would that work the same for collapsed payables, I guess?
It would if they share the same external document. So this is getting a little bit more in the weeds of the AP side of things, but there are ways you can, yeah, because, okay, so I'll take a step back. The way that the system knows that that collapsed deposit, they belong together, is that at the time of posting, so if I go back to my posted deposits, I find this one here. Let's find the related entries and the GL side of things, let's say. They share the same external document number. See that? So these are all linked to that deposit by having the same external document number. That's how it knows it's a collapsed deposit, right? With the ACH side of things, we'd have to play around and test with it, but I believe if you put the same external document number in the ACH file, like if they're all part of like ACH file 123 or whatever, that should work, but we'd have to test and play around with it. And again, we'll do more of that kind of stuff when we go through AP, because AP is the one that's going to be doing the payment cutting payments and all that stuff, right? Cutting checks, making EFTs, all that stuff. All right. So far, so good. It sounds like during testing, you want to call out these items. So I would make a note that these are specific scenarios that you want to do through testing, so that during that phase, we can figure this out so that you're in a good spot for go live, right? All right. The last little part of this this training really revolves around the subledger, looking at transactions and voiding and reversing transactions, right? So like I mentioned, the bank account is the master record of the cash management module. The customer is the customer, you know, or the AR module, vendor is the AP module. And so each of those modules, by virtue of having posting groups or whatever, have their own subledger. So the bank accounts, when I click on this balance, I can see that I can see the transactions of the subledger that are showing, right? You can go directly to the subledger just by searching for bank account ledger entries, and I can bookmark it too to my homepage. So that's kind of a throwback to yesterday's general overview of bookmarking. If I click on the bank account ledger entries, this is my subledger here. You'll notice it shows me the posting date, what type of document was, you know, description for that. You can see I cut a bunch of checks here, the amounts and all that kind of stuff. But it also shows me the open status. So this is where the stuff that we pulled into our bank rec, which are these lines down here, you see how they're not checked off because they're closed transactions. They've been reconciled. So even if I wanted to reverse this wire, actually, this one I could do, I think, because this isn't a check. Never mind. Actually, let me see that real quick. Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, I can't. Yeah, even if I wanted to reverse it, it won't let me because the entry's already been reconciled, right? So if I wanted to actually do an adjustment, I would probably lean towards putting in just a manual adjustment against this. To be honest, the other way to do it is to reverse out that entire reconciliation and then like void it and then redo your reconciliation, but I don't recommend that at all. Instead, what I would really just strongly say is to put in a manual entry. But that's the thing. Once a check clears and it's been reconciled, like you posted the reconciliation, you marked it as cleared in that bank reconciliation, you can't go in and void it, right? But anything else that's open, like I don't know. Let's say this private pay one, or actually maybe this adjustment here. I can come in here and I can reverse the transaction, and it shows me a little bit of a preview that these are the two GL entries it's going to post, and this is the bank account ledger it's going to post. I can click on reverse and print. Oh, this is already in a reconciliation right now. Okay, I kind of messed up by going back and forth because some of these are sitting right now in a reconciliation, and so it's not going to let me do that. So bear with me one second here. I'm just going to delete this reconciliation, and then I'm actually going to go to my general ledger setup and switch the other reconciliation method, and then delete this one too. Okay, that should now not be seen in a reconciliation now. So I should be able to reverse and print this, and there we go. So because that's kind of a neat control in place, if that line, even if it's not a posted reconciliation, but is sitting in a reconciliation that someone's actively working on, it won't let you reverse it until you remove it from that reconciliation. Or yeah, actually that's it. And then here's the little test report again that comes with any entry. It just shows me that I had two entries, minus 50 and a 50, basically a 50 and a 50 to the bank. Yeah, so to this GL account and this GL account. And it shows me all the dimensions that were part of that. Because again, you can have like unlimited dimensions. So it would show you all the dimensions that are part of this transaction. So this is the bank account ledger entry. But there is a separate ledger entry just for checks. Well, payments, I should say. So if I go to the check ledger entry page, you can see all the checks that I printed and the EFTs that I've issued are here in the single page. So if I get a call from, I don't know, Excel Energy, let's say, actually probably more like maybe Crazy Elk. I get a call from Crazy Elk saying, hey, we didn't get the check. I'm like, oh, okay, it must have gotten lost in the mail. We call our bank. We might do a stop payment on the check. We might have to pay like $5 or something, whatever the stop payment fee may be, in which case we want to put in a GL entry for that. But then ultimately we can come back in here and we can void the check. And when you void the check, we can void and unapply it. And what that will do is that will reopen that payable to then be paid again. So the Crazy Elk AP is now open again for this transaction that this was applied to. So we can reissue a check if we need to. And then this check number is showing up now as financially voided. So it's now a voided check. So yeah, the full trail is in there. And I can see the entries that make up this, or that were part of this transaction, because we have the original check, and then we have the voiding. So the transaction, the full audit trail is in there, and the reversal is tied to the original entry, so we can see what was reversed by what and all that good stuff.
But will that mess up your prior bank statement then? The one you
In
had
this
to reopen?
in this case, it won't, because this is okay, I guess. Yeah, because this is March and I only ever did the January rec. But if this were a historic transaction that was cleared in that bank rec, yes, that would absolutely mess up my bank rec, right? Because if I'm undoing an old reconciliation, that's the only time I can void this. Like I can't void this check if I tried. Oh, actually I can, I guess. Oh, this isn't one of them, is it? Oh, yeah. Oh, that's right. That's not the
That's
one.
131. So
Yeah.
what about that one there on 1228?
Yeah, let's try this one because this one was definitely part of my rec. Yeah, it won't let me void it because it's already been cleared. It's been closed. Right, so they're saying the statement status has to be open, but this is a closed statement. It's already been reconciled. So I can't void it. So I have a few options, but honestly, the best practice at this point is just to do a manual entry to deal with that because I don't really want to mess up my already posted rec. So I just do a manual entry, bring the cash back in, and then deal with it, in subsequent reconciliations, because that does come up. It's not often, but every now and again, a check will clear, and then a few months later, you might get notification that the check didn't actually clear. And that's how a lot of the you know, the scams that people do, like, hey, I'm going to send you money, and then you send me back some money. You send them back money, and then they somehow are able to reverse the original sending of money, and then you're out the money that they sent. You know what I mean? Like, it happens more so with international checks, I find, than it does with domestic checks. Like some of the organizations we deal with have multiple companies, countries that they deal with, and it can take months for something to legitimately clear in a different country. But meanwhile, your bank already shows it on your statement, right? So they'll
Our
say, oh
biggest
yeah,
problem is checks clearing twice.
clearing twice.
Yeah, so just this last month, we had a check that cleared a couple of years ago, and the person, because they mobile deposited it,
Oh,
and
their
they found
phone.
it,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
they deposited, and so of course it cleared again.
You'd think the banks have like some form of software to like, hey, this check number exists twice. Yeah, I always wonder about that because now with mobile deposit, you just hang on to the original check and you're just taking a picture with your phone, right?
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So those weird scenarios, they're all manual. They'd all be manual adjustments because
Okay.
I don't know. There's no real way to deal with that, right?
Well, Ramin, I'm wondering, and this might be beyond the scope of what we're doing today, but the positive pay functionality that Sparkrock has, would that be something that would prevent that?
I think it might, but then again, what I don't know is what the banks do with the positive pay file. Because again, you may have issued a check. Like, what is it exactly that banks will do with that? If they're just putting in their database that check 123 is a valid check number, you know, if they mobile deposit it and then mobile deposit again, won't the bank just say
Yeah,
is check
yeah.
123 a valid check number? You know what I mean? I think positive pay is more comes in handy when people are actually faking your checks, right? In that scenario, that's when the bank can say that check number is invalid and that pay is very different than check 123 was originally supposed to be, and the amount's different, and you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, it's a weird one. Banks got to figure. This is more the banks got to figure out their stuff than is a you guy problem. You guys is a problem, right? It just happens to make work for you because they don't know what they're doing at the banks, right? Yeah. Um, but yeah, that's kind of all I had on my agenda for this module, really, because there's not a ton to it. It's really the bank, the bank master record, the subledgers that are associated with it, deposits and reconciliations, and journal entries, right? That's kind of it. Um, I guess I don't know if you guys have any questions, we can go through that. Otherwise, you can get what's it like less than 20, well, maybe 23 minutes back of your lives.
Well, if you want to stop recording, I've got a kind of unrelated question.
Yeah, I'll just stop the recording now. Yeah.